everybody? This is another episode of Coordinated Chaos. On this week's episode, we will be recapping what happened in the NFL in Week 15, as well as we are going to get to the Week 16 Thursday night football game, as well as the two Saturday football games as well. So we're going to add a little bit to, the rundown here, but we have a lot of games to get to in this one. So let's go ahead and start off what happened on Thursday night football. Chargers versus Raiders. What a crazy game. Who would have thought this was going to happen? I obviously predicted that the Raiders would at least cover and win by 3 on the previous podcast last week. I was correct clearly on that one. They scored 63 points this game against a just lifeless Chargers team who obviously fired Brandon Staley the day after that just absolutely embarrassing showing by the team. Easton Stick had to start for a hurt Justin Herbert, who obviously didn't start because of his broken index finger on his throwing hand. So the team was already behind the 8 ball. Keenan Allen was not present in this game. He had a heel injury, which he's probably not going to come back from this season, because at this point, who would blame him if he didn't, based on where they're heading right now? The contract situation with him, and if he's even going to be on the team next year, he probably needs just to go ahead and get healthy for the off season and see what happens to see if he's still a part of the plans moving forward for the Chargers. But yeah, Raiders come out hot for whatever reason. Aiden O'Connell and that Raiders offense, they were a little pissed off that they didn't score any points at all against the Vikings the week prior, and they just came out and just were clicking on all cylinders. Clearly, though, like I said, the Chargers had pretty much given up on this season. None of those players were playing very inspired out there, and it showed in just the way the Raiders were able to just move up and down the football field on offense. Aiden O'Connell, I think, had 5 touchdowns in this one. And then there was 2 defensive scores. One by Jack Jones that was just an absolutely ridiculous interception. If it was in like a big time game and a big time high leverage situation, it would probably be like the play of the year on defense. But since the Raiders were up by so many scores, it kind of just didn't matter. But a lot of fantasy people were very excited if you started the Las Vegas defense against Easton Stick in that offense of the Chargers, which I did in one league. Still ended up losing in that one, of course. We'll get to a little bit of that later. But yeah, this was just a crazy Thursday night football game. A lot of fireworks, a lot of fantasy implications there. Zamir White gets the start over Josh Jacobs, who was hurt, obviously, with a high ankle sprain. We'll see how long he's going to be out. But, he had a pretty good day. I don't think a lot of people started Aiden O'Connell in fantasy, but if you did, you had a great showing there as well. Devontae Adams got in on the action, and so did Jacoby Myers, who threw him a touchdown in this game as well. So a lot of crazy stuff for fantasy. First week of the fantasy playoffs for a lot of people in their leagues, and for this first weekend, just to start off that hot on Thursday night for a lot of the players that are have fantasy just like control over a lot of people's teams. Man, it was just crazy. Let's move on, though. We have Vikings versus Bengals. This is the first game of the Saturday slate, which it was kind of crazy to have the Thursday night football game, the Saturday slate, and the Sunday slate, and then a Monday night football game. A lot of football this weekend in general, but Vikings and Bengals, man, a game that a lot of people probably didn't really want to tune into, but it was Saturday football. And if you're an NFL fan, if you're as much of a nerd as I am, you tune into a little bit of this at the very least. But this game ended up being a very good football game. I mean, Jake Browning, the battle of the backups, Jake Browning and Nick Mullins going head to head. Both teams have, playoff implications on the line, of course. So the Bengals needed this as a big win. Obviously the Vikings needed it as a win too. And they were going back and forth in this one. And Jake Browning at the very end of this game just made some plays to T. Higgins after Jamar Chase left the game with an injury. And man, that T. Higgins catch on the sideline there, and then he reaches back, completely not even looking at the way of the touchdown or the goal line there, and just gets it across the pylon. It was just an incredible football play by T. Higgins and Jake Browning just to throw up a prayer, essentially. But yeah, Bengals get a huge win here. They move into the 6th seed in the AFC playoff picture. They are now right there clearly in the mix at 8-6, and it's impressive what they've been able to do without Joe Burrow. Obviously, Jake Browning playing pretty well out there, and it seems like they're a little bit more creative than they have had to be in the past with Joe Burrow. They know Joe Burrow can get them out of situations that they normally wouldn't, be in. But Jake Browning has done a great job in relief of him. And the Bengals defense has stepped up. Their playmakers have stepped up. It stinks that Jamar Chase is probably going to miss this next week for the Bengals, but it is what it is, and they are on track to make the playoffs, which is very impressive. Nick Mullins, the Vikings, obviously still fighting to stay in contention in the NFC playoff picture as well. They are still the 6th seed as well, even at 7-7 after this loss. So they're still trying to win, obviously. Justin Jefferson ends up playing in this game after potentially, like, a lot of people didn't think he was going to because of that rib injury he suffered. But he played in this one. He's fighting through it, and he's going to continue to fight and try to get them into or maintain their playoff positioning there as the 6th seed in the NFC as well. Let's go on to the next one. Colts versus Steelers, second game of the Saturday slate. This one was not as pretty. If you had any, fantasy players on the Pittsburgh Steelers side of the ball, a lot of people should have known this was what was going to happen. If you were, as bored as me or some of these other, NFL nerds out here, and you watched the Thursday Night Football game of Mitch Trubisky, his first start back against the Patriots, you knew that pretty much only bad things were to come out of him starting once again, and it was very ugly. The Colts just kind of ransacked the Steelers in this one. Wasn't really even that close. I mean, the Steelers tried, but they just couldn't get anything going on offense. And then the Colts are just operating such a high level right now with Shane Steichen calling that offense right now, and Gardner Minshew just essentially operating like as a facilitator, as like a point guard out there, getting the ball into his playmakers' hands, They're running the football at a high clip right now, even with Jonathan Taylor. And then Zach Moss gets injured in this game, and doesn't matter, their backups and Trey Sermon, I can't remember the other guy's name. They both ran very incredibly well, very efficiently, and they got the job done. And that's just a testament to Shane Steichen, the way he's been able to coach up that team, and his play calling, his play designing, everything, the creativity he has there in Indianapolis is very sought after, and I'm very jealous of it considering what I had to watch this past Monday night for the Eagles. Let me move on to the Lions and the Broncos. This one obviously was the last one of the Saturday night slate. And, obviously Broncos are on a little bit of a heater as of late. They've been playing a lot better football, considering they started off 1-5. And then you have the Detroit Lions, who have been kind of in decline. They've been very up and down the last few, weeks in a row now. Jared Goff playing a little bit less, consistently as of late. And then in this one, they just have an offensive explosion here. They're able to run the ball all over the place. Jahmyr Gibbs is such a big part of that offense now, which I was clamoring for them to get him more involved at the beginning of the season. I think they would have got off to even more of a hot start if he would have been more involved earlier on in the season. But he is now, catching his stride, and he is just peaking at the right time. David Montgomery's still a punisher down there as a running back as well at the goal line and things of that nature. And then you're just getting the ball into the hands of Amon-Ra St. Brown. The rest of the weapons for the Lions on offense are a little bit more iffy, but they just have a nice core of a certain amount of weapons there that's really all they need, and Jared Goff just has to just not make mistakes, essentially, for them to be very effective on offense. Defense, like I said, the past few weeks, it's still a little bit, still leaves a little bit to be desired when it comes to run defense, which they were pretty decent at the beginning of the season, been a little bit lackluster as of late, and then their pass defense has been very iffy all season. We'll see if the offense can kind of just supplement that bad pass defense going into the playoffs and through the playoffs potentially for the Detroit Lions. Let's move on to the Falcons and the Panthers. This game was crazy. So me and my wife were actually in Charlotte for a little quick anniversary weekend, and my wife was potentially going to surprise me with some Panthers-Falcons tickets just to go to the game. Just, she knows I love the NFL. It doesn't matter who's playing. I'm willing to watch it. But then she looked at the weather. Thank the Lord, because it was disgusting on Sunday. Man, what a disaster of a weather game for the Panthers and the Falcons to be playing in Charlotte. We were planning on staying in Charlotte on Sunday a little bit longer than we did, because we want to do a little bit more shopping and running around and just doing some fun things there. But with how bad the weather ended up being in Charlotte, we just decided to dip out early, and we were watching Panthers fans trying to pile into the stadium as we were leaving the city, and man, I felt bad for them. They had ponchos, the wind was blowing, it was a disgusting day, and that just basically seeped right into the play of the Panthers and the Falcons, who the Panthers win another game. They are officially not just a 1-win team. They are now a 2-win team. They win on the back of 3 field goals by Eddie Pinheiro, and it's just like, where's rock bottom for the Falcons? Because I'm pretty sure we're here. I think this is it right here. Arthur Smith, a guy that like has been very controversial all season when it comes to like his usage of his players and his playmakers and stuff like that. He just did not use any of his guys in this game. I mean, the big 3 that you would consider their 3 best players on offense in Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Bijan Robinson all had very little to do with what was going on offense in this game. Bijan Robinson did get the ball one time and fumble, and then pretty much got benched from there on out. And I just think you can't do stuff like that when it's one of your best players on the team and you're losing to the worst team in all of football. Like, Arthur Smith can't get out of his own way, and the Falcons deserve to lose the game, and they did, and they got beat by the worst team in all of football. It's embarrassing for the Falcons and Arthur Smith. I think he's probably got to go, because if he's not going to utilize his best players, then what's the point of even having any of the best players on the planet essentially on your team? And he's just wasting talent there, and it's so embarrassing. It's ridiculous. And for fantasy managers like myself who have a Bijan, I mean, it didn't affect me this week because of a fantasy first round bye, but it could affect me next week. And just the fact that I have to like worry about one of the best players in all of football not being utilized the right way is just embarrassing in general. Let me move on to the Browns versus the Bears. This one was interesting as well. Joe Flacco comes out and he throws 3 picks. Old Joe, graybeard Joe, is just out there slinging the ball, and he's just out there having fun, and he does not care right now. And the Chicago Bears defense has been playing good as of late. And then you have Justin Fields trying to make some things happen on offense for the Chicago Bears, but just at the end of the day, some of his playmakers let him down. You had a Robert Tonyan drop touchdown in this one. They lost by, I think, 3 or 4 points in this one. They would have won the game if they would have essentially made that play in that moment. And then you have Joe Flacco at the end of the day. He drives them down for a game winner essentially, and it's just the Browns. Or actually, the Bears had a chance at the end there with a Hail Mary attempt to potentially win the game too. The ball it gets batted right into the hands of a Darnell Mooney. He was just laying on the ground. He basically grasped it, and then all of a sudden he like accidentally kind of kicks it out of his own hand. He kind of re-bobbles it out of his own hand and throws it back up in the air, and it gets picked off by the Cleveland defense. And the Cleveland defense has been playing pretty much lights out all season. Jim Schwartz has them playing great football, of course, and so now they have Joe Flacco, who, like I said, he's a guy that's going to go out there and he's going to sling it. He's going to throw picks, but if he just keeps coming back to it, like eventually it's going to work out, and that's exactly what happened in this game. And so they're going to be a scary opponent for anybody in the AFC. Obviously, I've kind of made that case for the last 2 or 3 weeks now that with Joe Flacco, they are going to be scary for any of the top AFC seeds that have to potentially face him, because obviously the Ravens will be the 1 seed, so they're going to be one of 5, 6, or 7 going into the playoffs, and it's going to be really, really interesting who they get in the first round. Next game, we have the Buccaneers and Packers. This one was disappointing. I was really looking for the Packers going on a little bit of a hot streak, making it into one of the last wild card spots in the NFC, and making some noise against one of the top NFC seeds, potentially with their fun offense and Jordan Love out there just slinging the ball around. Injuries and just the defense for the Packers have essentially affected the way the Packers have been able to play as of late, and the Buccaneers took advantage of it. Baker Mayfield essentially had a perfect day QBR rating wise in this game. It was like 158.3 or something like that. It's basically perfect. Like, he had like 4 touchdowns. He had like a ton of yardage. Basically didn't make any mistakes whatsoever, and Tampa Bay got the job done. They are now obviously very clearly atop not clearly, but they're atop the NFC South at 7-7, and they look like the best team in the NFC South right now. Obviously, with the Falcons dropping 1 to the Panthers. We'll get to another game later. But the Saints did win this weekend as well. It was a very uninspiring game against the Giants, and nobody really cared about that game. The Saints stay in contention in the NFC South, where they're also 7-7 as well, but the Buccaneers have the tiebreaker over them. Whatever. Either way, I think it's pretty much the Buccaneers to lose at this point, no matter which way you slice it and dice it. But yeah, Buccaneers get a big win over the Packers. And like I said, they stake their claim as the NFC South representative right this second at the very least. And the Packers just slide down pretty much out of playoff contention in general in the NFC, which is very disappointing. Like I said, I just kind of wanted to see what Jordan Love could potentially do there in the playoffs if he got in. Next game, Dolphins versus Jets. Absolute disaster for the Jets so far. Obviously, everything has been in decline as of late for the Jets in general. They go back to Zach Wilson last week, which it looked pretty good, but just like the vibes around the Jets are just so bad right now. He has to leave this game, and they're calling it a head injury. They're also calling it like a hydration problem or something like that. Trevor Siemian comes into this game, finishes it out, if I'm not mistaken, and it didn't matter. I think it was 30-0 in this game. Tyreek Hill didn't even play in this game. Didn't matter. Jalen Waddle went crazy in this game. So if you had him in fantasy, you probably won your week this week. He was just a huge part of the offense. And he pretty much just took the place of he took the production of what Tyreek Hill's responsibilities are on offense in this game, and he was the guy in that position at this point. And he took full advantage of it. He can do just about the same things that Tyreek Hill can do, more or less. But Tyreek's obviously more explosive and faster and whatnot. But just impressive stuff by the Dolphins, just continuing to win, obviously. It's a Jets team that's kind of down on luck. They're expected to win this game and continue to go on and compete for the 1 or 2 seed in the AFC, and that's exactly what they're going to continue to do and try to stave off, obviously a Buffalo Bills team that is getting hot at the right time, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But let's move on to the Texans versus the Titans. This one was crazy. Obviously, the Titans, have the history with the Houston Oilers. They use the throwback uniforms against the Houston Texans, who have a little bit of something to say about the fact that they don't get to use those Houston Oilers throwback uniforms. It's a weird situation. They kind of trolled them essentially in this game, and then the Texans, I should say, got the last laugh with Case Keenum at the helm at quarterback because of C.J. Stroud could not play because of a concussion. So in this one, man, basically Case Keenum just kept fighting, and they kept nailing and clawing. They pretty much shut down Derrick Henry in a way we haven't seen him completely get shut down in a long time. And man, I can't believe that Houston even won this game. It was a very, very wild one. Fairbairn, the kicker, was clutch as heck the entire day, and they just were able to get it done at the end of the day. And so the Texans move on to be 8-6, and now they are on the bubble. They are the 8th seed, looking to try to get into the playoffs there. The Colts are right there in front of them at the 7th seed. They're both right there. So you have the Jags, Colts, and Texans all at 8-6, sitting there trying to find a way into the AFC playoff picture. Craziness in the AFC South. Who would have known that division would have been so competitive at the beginning of the season? And like I said, the Titans don't just lay down. It's Mike Vrabel. He's got, he's prideful. He's not going to just lay down for anybody, and especially a division rival like that. So shout out to the Texans for pulling one off. D'Amico Ryan's doing a great job there in Houston. Let's move on. Chiefs versus Patriots. This game was a little bit more iffy than you would probably hope for if you were a Chiefs fan. It started off a little bit shaky, but then the Chiefs kind of got their way going, and the Chiefs won at the end of the day. Not a whole lot to say here. Honestly, the Patriots are just not very good. Their defense has been playing pretty good as of late. Offense is better with Bailey Zappi, but still not great. Kansas City's defense is just too good. And, Pat Mahomes on the other side of the ball, you're not going to lose a whole lot of games where you're this outmatched talent-wise and all the above, basically. So Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs get the job done once again, and they're moving on. They're the 3 seed at 9-5, so they're looking to potentially move up in the AFC seeding standings if possible, depending on what's going on the rest of the season for a lot of these teams. Next game, 49ers versus Cardinals. Once again, not a whole lot to say here. Cardinals were competitive in the first half. They fought. They really did. James Conner had a pretty good game in the start of this one. The Cardinals and the 49ers always I feel like are pretty competitive in first halves of these games, but then San Fran's talent just took over in the second half, and they just ripped them apart. I think they scored like 45 in this one, and it felt like it was nothing. It was just a snap of the finger, and you have Deebo Samuel scoring a couple touchdowns. You have Christian McCaffrey having one of his days, first week of the playoffs, and anybody that passed up on Christian McCaffrey in the first round of the playoffs somehow, or in the first round of the draft this year in fantasy, me, complete idiot. Just crazy like decision by me to do that anyways, but that's on me. I got to live with that decision. Still in the playoffs, in the fantasy playoffs, the semifinals, we'll see how that goes. Probably gonna get smoked, but either way. But yeah, Christian McCaffrey has a game where he completely wins your fantasy day for you with a one, obviously just performance against the Cardinals. But yeah, 49ers just continue to roll. They look like easily the best team in all of football, no matter what. Really, it just comes down to health, which is what I've been saying the last few weeks now. Is just as long as they have all of their players at their disposal, they are going to be basically unstoppable. So they keep rolling. Next game, Rams versus Commanders. This one, Rams get another huge win. They lose last week, obviously, against a tough Ravens team. Tough environment there in Baltimore. Barely lose that game. And then they come back and they needed this win, obviously, against the Commanders to stay in contention in the NFC playoff picture, which they are right now the 7 seed, right behind the Vikings, who are also 7-7. So Rams staying in contention. They're getting hot at the right time. Matthew Stafford's still playing very well. Defense is still playing above average for, obviously what they have there on the defensive side of the ball. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams, they got players. They're going to be scary for anybody who has to play them in the first round in the NFC playoffs. Let's move on. Bills versus Cowboys. This one was one of the shockers of the weekend, obviously. Cowboys coming off of just a streak of just crazy hot offense. Their defense playing pretty well as of late. And then in this one, they actually finally have to leave Jerry World for the first time. It feels like in like a month at the very least. And they go up to Buffalo in the elements. It wasn't even cold. It was raining a little bit, I think, up there. And they just completely fall apart. The Buffalo Bills come out hot. You could feel the energy that the Buffalo Bills came out with. They felt, I don't know. It felt like through the screen, they felt like they were being disrespected. Like everybody was like, "Oh, the Cowboys are going to win this game." And I feel like they came out and they were physical. They were hitting. They were tackling. It was really awesome to see. Then the Buffalo Bills, man, to everyone's surprise, what they did was they ran the football down the Cowboys' throat. And this is something that we have thought was the case with the Cowboys defense leading up to this game, but nobody has really been able to execute it at a pretty high level until this game right here. And it showed. The Cowboys defensive line is fast. They're not very big. They're not like a heavy D-line. They're not a big D-line. They're fast and they're physical. But if you can lean on them and continue to lean on them as the season and as the game goes on, they will get more and more tired. And that's what you saw here in the Buffalo Bills offensive line, which is not as good as a lot of the offensive lines in all of football, honestly. But if you just stay consistent with it and you can continue to run the ball against the Cowboys, they will eventually let up some big plays. James Cook went absolutely crazy in this game, dropped a 40 burger on me in fantasy, and I was not a happy camper. Basically won the game for my opponent in fantasy this week. But he went crazy. Obviously, Joe Brady now taking over at OC for the Buffalo Bills. After the firing of Ken Dorsey, he has gotten James Cook more involved in the offense in general, in the passing game, just running the ball in general. They still take him out at the goal line, which I think is just like kind of annoying, especially for if you have him in fantasy. That's super annoying because Latavius Murray is just like poaching like 1 to 2 touchdowns a game at this clip. The way the Bills offense has been operating the last few weeks, so Bills get a huge win here, absolutely rout the Cowboys. I think it was 31-10 at the end of this one, if I'm not mistaken. But it was worse than that. It was 31-3 with any kind of real time left, and the Cowboys got a garbage time CeeDee Lamb touchdown, who I was also playing against in fantasy, so I got absolutely smoked. But either way, I thought I had a chance at the beginning because I had that Las Vegas defense and I had Ty Chandler. Whatever. Nobody actually cares. All right, let's move on. Obviously, like I said, Bills get a huge win. They're hot right now. basically, I think they're going to have a chance to get back into the playoff picture in the AFC. And if they play, nobody wants to see Josh Allen in that offense, this new look offense with James Cook more involved and things of that nature. I don't think anybody wants to see them in the AFC. No top seed in the AFC wants to see them first game of the playoffs, and it is going to be super annoying for somebody over there. Bills and Josh Allen getting hot right at the right time. It is awesome to see them kind of get back on track after a rough stretch in the season for them. Next game, Ravens versus Jaguars. I'm going to go ahead and make a statement here. I think the Jaguars are cooked. I think they're done. Trevor Lawrence obviously dealing with an ankle injury, so I don't know how much stock you put into that, but I don't know. I just haven't been super sold on Trevor Lawrence just yet. Like he's been playing decent football. He'll have a great game in between like a 4-game stretch of just like super mediocre football. They usually win football games they're supposed to win, but in these big games, a lot of them they just kind of fold. So I don't trust the Jaguars really in general. The defense is very up and down. The offense is very up and down as well. If they can't run the ball, the offense is usually not very good. In this one, Travis Etienne couldn't really get anything going. It was just, I don't know. I just don't trust the Jaguars. But the Ravens, they just continue to keep getting the job done. It still doesn't look super pretty from the Ravens' point of view when it comes to getting these wins, but that they keep winning. So it is what it is. But I will be honest, it's the same type of thing I thought about with the Eagles when the Eagles were 10-1, and I was like, well, it's not looking pretty, but they keep getting wins, so it is what it is. I'm wondering if the other shoe's going to drop like it did for the Eagles, for the Ravens coming up the pipeline when it comes to the playoffs. For the narrative of Lamar Jackson, I hope that's not the case, because if like the other shoe ends up dropping and it's like the first round of the playoff, or if the Ravens get the 1 seed and it's the divisional round of the playoffs, and the shoe does finally drop on them and they just get destroyed somehow by another opponent in the AFC. Like, what if they have to run into a Buffalo Bills? Like, that would be the worst thing that could possibly happen to them in the divisional round, and it's very possible at this point, if I'm not mistaken. So, Ravens keep winning, like I said, have the 1 seed, have a huge game upcoming against the 49ers this weekend, and I'm really looking forward to that. That is going to be an incredible game, night game on Christmas that everybody's going to be tuned into, because it is the 1 seed versus the 1 seed. We're going to see who's the top dog in all of football. I have my money on the San Francisco 49ers. I think they're going to win this one, to be completely honest with you. I'm hoping for the best. The Ravens will win it, to be clear, because I still, I don't know. I just want a chance, even though I'm going to get to it in a minute. The Eagles completely blew their chance at the 1 seed for the most part, but there's still a very slim chance that it happens. I'm not holding out a whole lot of hope, but let's move on. I just kind of alluded to it. Eagles versus Seahawks, Monday Night Football. Absolute disaster of a game for the Eagles. A collapse, a fold of all time. Just folded like a $2 lawn chair out there. Just Jalen Hurts was sick, had to travel separately from the team in a different plane charter or whatever to get there, because he didn't want to get the rest of his teammates sick. Shows up, actually plays in the game. First drive, you go down, straight down, methodical, throwback 2022 Philadelphia Eagles type of drive where you're just running the ball effectively. It's balanced on offense. You're working the middle of the field. You go straight down the field and score a touchdown with a rushing touchdown by Jalen Hurts. And it looks like, oh, maybe the Eagles are back. Obviously, the Eagles this past weekend made some major changes in the defensive side of the football, with play calling the responsibility of play calling on the defensive side of the ball going to Matt Patricia, obviously former DC for Bill Belichick in some of the Super Bowl years there in New England, as well as former head coach of the Detroit Lions as well. He was a senior defensive assistant for the Eagles all of this season so far. And they gave him the play calling duties over Sean Desai, who technically still has the role of defensive coordinator for the time being. But they put him up in the booth, and they showed him on the camera, just kind of like an embarrassing thing for him, that he had to kind of relinquish his play calling duties based off a decision made by Nick Sirianni that we figured out later on. That was his decision, we think, at least. He could have been coaxed into it. But whatever. Either way, Matt Patricia has control of the defense. But Eagles go down in this game, score immediately, get a 3-and-out, go down, and it looks like they're about to go down and score again, and there's this like weird phantom false start on Jason Kelce right before they're about to do a tush push, which, man, I don't know, dude. They just keep throwing these weird flags whenever the Eagles try to tush push. I think it's like a pseudo way of like, hey man, you guys need to like stop doing that. But they're not going to ban it. Apparently, there's the whole report out there that they're still looking at it. They're probably still they're not going to ban it because I mean it would look ridiculous that you ban something that only one team's incredibly good at. That would just be kind of unfair. But that's besides the point. Tush push thing, we can have a whole conversation about that by itself. But either way, Eagles look like they're about to go up 14-0. Phantom false start on Jason Kelce. They only go up 10-0. And then that's when the defense starts to fall apart a little bit. Kenneth Walker starts running the ball very well for the Seahawks, kind of get them back in the game. They eventually tie it up 10-10 after or sometime in the third quarter. And man, it just looked like the Eagles went directly away from what was working in the first half. You were running the ball effectively. You were staying balanced on offense. You were passing the ball over the middle of the field. It was wide open. You were just getting chunk plays it wasn't big chunk plays, but it was like 5, 6, 7, 8 yards at a time when you were passing it. And when you were running the ball, it was, 3, 4, and 5 yards here and there, but you were still marching yourself down the field. And that's like, you just got to stick with that. And that's part of the problem I'm having with the play calling, the play designing, all that stuff. Brian Johnson, Nick Sirianni, everybody's involved. Jalen Hurts in this game, bad decisions. We don't know for sure. Like, we're not in those offensive meetings for the Eagles, so I don't know, if it's like one of those situations. We had a quote, obviously, after the game of A.J. Brown, of people on Twitter saying this was, a very dumb decision by Hurts or later on in the game when he threw two bad interceptions. One to end the game essentially and seal the game for them. The other one that got the Seahawks really back into that game and got them an opportunity to go down and score a touchdown to take the lead. But either way, basically, A.J. Brown said that on I think it was the game-sealing interception, that Jalen Hurts' responsibility on that play, that A.J. Brown is the number one read on that play, and he's supposed to rip that ball, which, if that's the case, that's just irresponsible play calling, irresponsible play designs, irresponsible coaching in general. And then on top of all that, a bad decision by Jalen Hurts, even though if that's what he's being told to do, sometimes you got to stray away from what those guys are telling. If it's the wrong football decision, sometimes you just got to go against the grain sometimes and just not throw that football. But all of it ended up being a colossal collapse. You had Drew Lock. He had to drive down 92 yards with a minute and I think like 57 seconds left. He had one timeout. They didn't even have to use the timeout. They drove right down the field. This newly play calling led defense of Matt Patricia. Drew Lock, backup quarterback, goes 92 yards straight down the field. 29-yard touchdown pass to Jackson Smith and Jigba. A big for a touchdown to essentially seal the game. And then you had on that drive DK Metcalf, a big time play to him as well, a chunk play there. And it's funny, this morning everybody's looking at things on the Eagles and everybody's panicking. The sky's falling, obviously, and things of that nature. And then we have a video come out of that last drive, and it's funny if you look at it, every single pass play in that last drive, that 92 yards, James Bradberry is the guy that got beat. And it's just like, man, dude, I've never seen a more colossal collapse other than the game last night than what James Bradberry has done from last season to this season. He was a second-team All-Pro, and from him to go from that to basically a liability in an offseason is incredible, just like folding. Incredible, just a decline that, just falling off a complete cliff when it comes to, I guess, like athletic ability. He just can't stay with his receivers anymore. Like he can't run anymore. It's so sad to see because honestly, Bradberry was such a smart and good player last year for us. Obviously, not a great hold there in the Super Bowl to essentially seal that game for us as well. But obviously, Pat Mahomes would argue it differently. You can't throw that flag in that time period and that time of the game and blah blah whatever. But anyways, it just. Bradberry falls off a cliff, just gets smoked that entire drive. Eagles go down there, and then that's when you get the game-sealing dumb throw to A.J. Brown in double coverage, essentially, when all you need is like another 15 yards. You got 2 timeouts left to get into field goal position and kick a field goal that is makeable from a guy that earlier on the season had made a 59-yard field goal in the pouring rain, windy in Philadelphia when it was pouring against the Buffalo Bills. So Jake Elliott very capable of making a long field goal in bad weather and things of that nature, and you just completely nixed the opportunity for a Jake Elliott to make a play like that when it comes to Jalen Hurts just making that decision to throw that ball. And like I said before, we don't know if it was a coach's decision to essentially, that's your first read, that's what you want to do, that's what you have to throw. If that's the case, like I said, just irresponsible coaching in that moment. Just all you need is just a few yards to give you an attempt at a field goal to take this into overtime. And then you never know what happens there. I still, like, if the Eagles would have won this game, I still wouldn't have felt great about the Eagles moving forward in this game. But because of the loss, obviously now I am extremely concerned about them moving forward. Offensively, I don't like the play calling. I don't like the play designing. I don't like the way Jalen Hurts has kind of regressed at this point in the season. I don't think he is a bad player in any way necessarily. I just think he's getting into some bad habits, and I don't know if that is the result of what the coaching staff is kind of teaching him to look at and see and do. Because Nick Sirianni is a guy that preaches taking big shots and having big plays, and then on the defensive side of the ball, stopping big plays from happening. That's kind of their philosophy: is make big plays, don't let them happen to you. And I don't know if it's gotten to a point where it's just last year, obviously in 2022, when the Eagles went on that huge run to the Super Bowl, they were destroying teams, they were blowing teams out. They were doing it with the big play to A.J. Brown, to Devontae Smith, the big time shots in those games. And we should have known, as Eagles fans, the coaching staff of the Eagles should have known that wasn't going to be sustainable forever. And it came back to bite them in the rear in this season in general. And I think they've gotten too happy with the big shot, the big play stuff, and they just got to figure out a way to methodically work the way down the field and not get impatient with it. And so I don't know what the answers are going to be on the offensive side of the ball, because it seems like these same mistakes and these same things are happening every single week, and the defenses are catching on to it. It seems predictable. It seems vanilla. It seems like the play designs are uninspiring. There's a lot of stuff going wrong with the Philadelphia Eagles right this second, and I don't know what the full answer is. I don't know if it means the play caller, the offensive coordinator, and Brian Johnson has to go. Obviously, they were willing to make a change in the play calling department for the defense. We'll see if there's some kind of change in the offensive side of the ball. They made a change after 2 losses in a row. We'll see what happens for 3 losses in a row. Maybe it has to get to 4. We have to lose a Tommy DeVito on Christmas for them to make some offensive changes. But what does that say about Nick Sirianni, who already doesn't do the play calls? He's more of a just game manager type football, head coach right now. So like, what does that have to say about his, blueprint on, or his fingerprint, I should say, on the offense and what that all entails? Because at this point, like, if he's not designing the plays well, if he's not play calling as well, if he's not doing that on game day, I know like a big portion of being a head coach is managing the game on game day, knowing when to go for it on 4th down, which is a thing he's good at, knowing when to use timeouts, which is a thing he's pretty good at for the most part. Being a leader of men, making sure he communicates with everybody correctly, blah, 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 blah. I mean, that's a big portion of being a head coach, but if all the rest of it's lacking, and you're having to scapegoat, your defensive coordinator and your offensive coordinator, at what point is this all on Nick Sirianni and what he's in charge of at this point? So I don't know what the answer is. I guess we'll find out shortly if this season continues to absolutely collapse. They already have clinched the playoffs in this one. They did that when Dallas essentially lost on Sunday. But to just be falling basically ass backwards into the playoffs is just not a fun feeling, especially when Like maybe you get some momentum going into the playoffs because you have the Giants and the Cardinals and the Giants again. But the way they're playing right now, I would not put it past them to lose one of these 3 games to the Cardinals or the Giants at this point. Giants are no complete pushover at this point with Tommy DeVito. They're playing inspired over there. The Cardinals could be feisty with Kyler. So if the Eagles win out, they win the division, they win the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys then are the 5 seed. The Eagles are either probably the 2 or 3 seed there. They have to still beat out the Detroit Lions for the rest of the season. We'll see how that goes, but I was really hoping that the Eagles could pull this win off and just give me any kind of inkling that maybe there's things changing on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think anything's really going to change on the defensive side of the ball. It's a lot of personnel stuff that just is going haywire on that side. Like I said, Bradberry fell off a cliff. Darius Slay had to get surgery, and they're starting Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks and Josh Jobe out there in a rotation on the other side, on the in the cornerback position. The middle of the field, the linebackers are very up and down right now. We signed Shaq Leonard, obviously mid-season here or even late in the season here, and he looks like a shell of himself, does not look anywhere close to the all-pro he used to be, obviously. Zach Cunningham, our best linebacker, was a guy that we picked up in the middle of preseason, and he was hurt in this game. He didn't play in this game with a knee injury, so there was injuries on this one. Cam Jurgens, our starting right guard, didn't play in this game, and the guy that replaced him, Sua Opeta, got absolutely demolished in this game by Leonard Williams and just all kinds of different plays. Draymond Jones, it was ugly for him in this one. I don't know where, like I said, I don't know what the answers are. I don't know where this goes for the Eagles. It does not look good. Like I said, they're falling backwards into the playoffs, and if they get smoked in the first round of the playoffs, I would not be surprised if heads roll. I don't know who those heads will be right off the rip, but big moves could be coming if the Eagles do not get this thing back on track. That's it for all of the Week 15 recap. Let me get to the Week 16 Thursday Night Football preview. That is going to be the Rams versus the Saints. I think this game is in LA, if I'm not mistaken. So the Rams are favored by 4 points in this game. And I think I go with the Rams there. Rams -4. I'm calling it now. The Rams are getting hot right at the right time. Kyron Williams, that running game is really going. I know the Saints' run defense is solid, but I just can't trust Derek Carr in that offense, especially with the potential of Chris Olave being out, I think, again in this game. A short week coming off another week where he missed on Sunday, and I can't trust Derek Carr in a big spot to really come through right now. That offense has been very uninspiring there in New Orleans. And then you got the Rams, who are getting hot at the right time. I think the Rams probably roll the Saints in this one. So yeah, I'm gonna go Rams there. Then Saturday football games. One of them, the first one is the Bengals versus the Steelers. The Bengals are favored by 1.5 in this game, and there's an inkling that there's a chance that Kenny Pickett can play in this game. Otherwise, it's going to be Mason Rudolph. They are officially benching Mitchell Trubisky in this one. He was not getting the job done. 2 terrible, just performances by him. The last 2 games for the Pittsburgh Steelers, pretty much knocking themselves out of playoff contention in general in the AFC. They're going to Mason Rudolph. Like I said, potential chance Kenny Pickett plays in this one, but he is coming off that ankle surgery. So I would hope that he doesn't play in this game for his health's sake. Because, if he has the Bengals defense coming after him in this one, he can't really escape pressure because he's still recovering from an ankle injury. I don't like the optics of that. I don't like that at all. And so I'm going to go with the Bengals -1.5 in this one. If you're starting Mason Rudolph against the Bengals defense and Jake Browning, who is just a very good facilitator right now, he's just getting the ball into his playmakers' hands. I think the Bengals can win this game by at least a field goal. So I got the Bengals in that one. Next one, Bills -10.5 versus the Chargers. I'm taking that. Bills are favored by 10.5. I think they cover. I think the Bills are, like I said, just kind of like the Rams, getting hot at the right time. Everything's starting to click for them. Joe Brady has that offense clicking. And then the Chargers last week, obviously, a complete doo-doo show against the Raiders, and I don't think they're going to turn anything around. I don't care that they have Brandon Staley out of the way. I don't care that there's a potential interim head coach bump. I don't see it happening this season. I think everybody's given up. It's too late in the season for the interim head coach bump, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. Like I said, the Bills are just way too hot right now. I think they win and cover the 10.5. So that's what I got for this episode of the podcast. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Please subscribe and follow on my TikTok and on YouTube, please. And if you are on one of the podcast platforms, please rate and review. Give me 5 stars. Put a little comment in there. That would be very appreciated. That would help out the podcast quite a bit. I will talk to you guys next week. Peace. Oh, and everybody also have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. If you're on New Year, whatever. We'll be back after that. Appreciate it.